Okay, we've oh, I always try to wait till 7:05. Okay, so yes, the I assume because we were in the car, so we missed part of it. And yes, what the visa process consists of is that the visa is just to let you in. It's your permit to be permitted in. And that we were there by the time for the border control um, question of the fact that it is still possible to be turned around at the border. Okay, but when you're in the US and your visa expires, you don't need to get in a panic about your visa expiring. But you need to have an appointment to get your visa renewed when you return to Serbia if you're going back into the US on your student visa. I would say that also one of the most important things that students can do, and I don't know if they covered this in the first part or not, but is that whenever you receive your I-20 form and it's signed by what's known as a DSO, a designated signing official, it is usually out of the International Student Services, sometimes the ISS, sometimes an International Student Office, the ISO. These schools all have different names for those things, and that you want to get acquainted with them and you want to know who they are, because once you get there, they are the ones who help you stay in status. And some of the things that it is, I would say sometimes it's easier for a graduate student to find themselves out of status, which can cause you a whole bunch of trouble depending on where your case lands and how the ISO or ISS at your school feels about this, or if they can get you back in status or not. And the reason it's more common with graduate students, who of course are generally more mature and responsible than undergraduate students, is because one of the things is that often you have internships and work experiences and things like that where you have to file a lot of documentation. Okay. And when you're filing that documentation, that you can have, what is a deadline or not a deadline. And they can be very funny, because I had a very close friend that I worked with for many, many years, that as soon as she moved up to that job, that when I would even try to ask her about someone who had very accidentally slipped out of status, she was deeply offended that they were out of status. And I'm like, you don't know them? They're not at your university. What happened to you with this? But a lot of that can always be avoided if you remember to go over to the International Student Services, or as they sometimes call it, the International Student Office, because those are the on-site part of this bureaucracy that is part of your being in status. I mean, I have to go to the Serbian office and pick up my visa and, get my permits to stay here. It's just kind of a fact of life. At one time, they didn't have visas or passports. Pre-World War I, people used to just kind of do whatever they wanted. Okay, but it's not like that anymore, and so you have to be in status. And for example, my son that studies in Prague, they're like, well, he's an American. No, yes, he is, and he can go hang out there, just like you all can for 90 days, but he can't be a full-time student. He must have a student visa in order to study there. Okay, so we can see on our little site that we look at each evening. Okay, I'm really trying to sell you all on this site. You can see here that okay, that you've even got a little movie to watch, okay, about navigating the student visa process. And I'm sure that they showed you the Bureau of Consular Affairs website, okay, the Department of Homeland Security pages. Probably you saw those as well. Okay, I think that one of my favorite sites is the visa appointment wait times, because this seems like there are a lot of very scary campfire stories going around about this. I mean, for years. And you can, when you want a visa, because Serbia has a pretty efficient service, okay? And you can see why it says now 999 calendar days. That's because of the COVID situation. But for student and exchange visitor visas, you're looking at 3 calendar days, and other non-immigrant visas are 7 calendar days. And you can do this repeatedly to see where you are. But because of the 10-year tourist visas that they have begun to issue, that you will find that your wait times for these student visas, work travel, and these kind of programs, they're pretty quick, okay? You don't have a lot of wait time here as you would in some countries. And so then you've got this Department of Homeland Security. Also, you've got the I-20 form that your school will send you. And when you get the I-20, not today. Okay, when you get the I-20, it's always a good idea to maybe scan it and send it to our office. Even though they beg you not to show it to someone, it's a public document. You can show it to us. They just don't want anyone to see how much money they are or are not giving you, or if you could get a better deal somewhere else. But we can look at that and make sure that that is in order. Okay, because sometimes there can be little typos and things like that. Okay, the main thing with the I-20 form is that it's issued by your school. Sometimes the schools will tell you in the beginning that you need to fill out a certificate of finances, and that's because they're looking for money. Because they will say, you need to fill this out so we can issue a visa. But often they're actually looking to see kind of how it's going with the funding. Or you expect a scholarship, go ahead and send it in and don't worry. Because if you don't have money but you need a scholarship, sending that in at your point of application, when they ask you about money in the bank and to show how much money you have personally, how much money is in the bank, and these type of forms, do not worry about that, because they're either going to give you the scholarship or you're not going to go. But some will ask at the beginning so they can plan how they're going to budget their graduate students. Also, I've been receiving your forms, and I've enjoyed reading your different stories, your ambitions. Everybody seems to be headed in a really good direction. And graduating from a master's in 2016 does not leave you too long and away from school. I don't know when people begin to get this idea that a mid-career professional was 23 years old, and everything after that was the end of the world. And also some of the other questions I saw that I liked with someone that, for example, in the US, it is very easy to get certified as a teacher if you can speak Spanish. Okay, there are various ways to get certification. So if you speak Spanish and English, that's really good bilingual business in the United States. And areas down there along the border, believe it or not, are looking for that. Okay, so that we have a very large Spanish speaking population. In fact, really all over the US, California, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, all the way along that corridor to Florida, and then even going up the coast, plenty of people even in the Midwest. And so it's a really wonderful skill to have. So if you go to graduate school, I think you will find that it's a real plus, and it's a good way to look at careers for optional practical training and things like that down the road. That's not a bad situation to be in. Okay, but they'll talk a little bit here about the I-20. So you can just basically go to these two sites, look around, see what all they have to tell you about your visa. Nearly all of you are going to be wanting an F1 visa. One thing that I've seen some schools do, especially when couples are married, is some schools are also eligible to issue a J1 visa to a PhD student. You need to always check on this because they can change it tomorrow. But it offer the spouse a J2, and that would enable your spouse, the person you're married to, the opportunity to work while you study. And that can also be an attractive option because nobody's career really goes on hold. Okay, but there is not a lot to the visa application. You do the paperwork, you're careful with it, you pay attention to what you're doing, you follow the instructions. They gave you their consular email. Do not be afraid to email them. They are more than happy to answer emails. Their response time is excellent, and you shouldn't really have any problems. So we can also answer questions, but often some questions are what we call boilerplate that we're used to all the time. Sometimes people have special situations, in which case we advise you to go ahead and write to consular. Okay? And if your situation is complicated and you're not sure how to explain it, we can help you also with that kind of situation. But you can write to them in Serbian. Okay? Because generally, the person who reads your email is going to be fluent in Serbian. Okay, if you have a tourist visa in your expired passport, you would just need to travel with that passport. Okay, so they can see the new passport and the visa in the old passport. Okay, and that's done for tourism. Okay, as far as having an active visa, okay, when that is the general rule, it's the general rule. You mean if you had a J1 and an F1? I'm looking at these questions, and Giovanna's asked if that applies if you have an old J1 visa. Well, I would think that your old J1 visa is probably expired. Is that correct? Okay. But yes, they would like you to have only one visa at a time. Okay, does anyone have anything else or any other questions about this particular matter as it pertains to student visas? Okay, I think that with the internet that you can probably get more visa information and assistance from this travelstate.gov, the U.S. Embassy website. Education USA has information portals and little videos for you to watch and these kind of things, that I do not believe that it's nearly as complicated. And another thing that I think a lot of people should realize is that it's usually relatively young people that go abroad to study and, you know, have to get these visas and do this and do that. And that usually up to that point, 10 years ago, this is how things have changed. Most people had never done anything like that in their lives. But now everybody's on tablets, online. You're registering for this, registering for that, filling this out, watching Instagram, multitasking, doing a million things at once. And I don't think really that a little visa paperwork for a bona fide student is going to be a problem. Okay, just fill it out and you know where to direct your questions. Okay, so if there's nothing else on that, then we can just open the floor and just start to take questions about the process, how you all are doing so far. I'm also starting to get us ready to move into this Slack space, and I made us a little special room because we have the Future Perfect program that we developed for undergraduates. And now for graduate post-diploma students, we're developing a program that we have decided to call Future Professional, okay, because you all are heading out into grown-uphood for sure when you start graduate studies and career and those kind of things. So I thought that we would, after Friday, over the weekend, we will start inviting you guys in there. You will find there are already some other graduate students in there, some that are actively studying in the U.S. that will come in and comment from time to time and answer questions. And I thought that we would just take this journey together to change this program and make it more modern, because people are much more aware. You know, when I started doing this, people couldn't even travel outside of Serbia. And I think you all were probably pretty young then, but it was so serious. I see that question. I'll get to it, Dorothea, but things were so serious that whenever I had a student who went to the UK to work as a programmer, and he showed me his British visa in his passport because he had the job, I thought, I wish I could go out. It took me about 2 minutes to realize that I could go out. Not so much anymore, though, eh? Okay. So, but they will, okay, whenever you get the I-20, and let me see if I can find a good sample I-20. I've got plenty of them, but they have other people's names on there, so I don't think they would. Okay. Let's see. Save. Right. Okay, let's try to find it. Well, that's not my idea of a good one. I'd like to find one that's nice and big. Okay, can everybody see the I-20 form? I didn't share it. Okay, so that would be now. Guys, I'm really not that bad with Zoom because I'm old. To tell you the truth, I'm kind of zoomed out. I don't know about you all, but all this online stuff, and I've been on so many platforms. Okay, here's what your I-20 looks like. If you all can see that well, I wish the color were a little bit better on that. Let me see if I can get that. Oh. Let's see what happens if we turn it into a PDF, because I want you to be able to look at these figures. That should be better. Okay, I hope you all can see this. I believe this looks a little bit better. Okay, you can see pretty much, you know, how it runs. And this is what they fill out. Most of the time, schools at some point in the application, they're going to ask you to see the data page of your passport. And that's the page with your picture and that other part where you sign up there. Okay. And if you have a visa, they'll want to know, I mean, a U.S. visa, they'll want to know if you have one. And usually they'll want a picture of that or a visa number or something. But at what point a school asks for that, it really depends on how they process these things. Some schools want them right away. Okay, other schools at different points will say, please send us this and please send us that. But this is some of the information that they're going to be using up here about you, okay, to fill this out. Okay. And then they'll talk about your program. As you can see, this is a PhD. By the way, I was really impressed to see so many PhD students. An excellent choice to go on with it. Okay. And how long the program is going to last and these type of things. Okay. The date the program is going to start, the date the program is going to end. Okay. Now, when you ask about the bank funds in your question, here's what I can tell you. You see that his tuition and fees, this is the cost of attendance, the living expenses. See, he's probably married. He's bringing someone with him, probably a wife, maybe a child, probably a wife. Okay, my guess. Okay, companion. partner, significant other. But anyway, this person is not coming alone. Is this a boy or a girl? Oh, this is a doe. Okay. So anyway, down here, then they talk about what it's expected to cost you to live. Okay. And then the extra money for the dependent. And they'll talk about here your personal funds and your teaching assistantship. And what you need to do is have this side of the equation equal to or greater than this side. I've actually seen it greater than the cost with fellowships and different things. But if you are supposed to have $3,000 in personal funds, then yes, they will indeed look at that. Okay, and they will want to see proof from the bank that you have $3,000 in personal funds to cover that amount. Okay, and you can see, please report to International Student Services upon arrival. Okay, a few other things that when you do get ready to go, we'll talk about this a little bit in pre-departure as well as answer any other questions. But one of the things that you'll always want to be aware of is have a department contact. Have someone that you can call or contact if your flight is delayed, if there's no one there to pick you up at the airport, if they're going to arrange for an airport pickup, if you need to get from the airport to somewhere, if you get tied up in customs, if something weird happens, it's good to have a phone number of someone that you can contact. Now, do you all have any other questions for me? Today. Anything else on your mind about this whole process? Unrelated questions are fine. Okay, those external assessment documents and the how competitive documents are really self-assessment documents. And for this external assessment, this is something that you should email out, hand out to your friends, ask your parents about this. You can take those things and you can actually write them in Serbian, and this will help you when you begin to write your way into graduate school. And that's something that we'll talk about more over in the Slack. This week is just an overview. I have never done this. Usually I give one presentation a week. So this is the first time that I just thought we would do these these 5 steps of State Department, and then we'll go in for a little deeper dives into things. Okay. Right off the top of my head, when you say scholarships, do you mean for absolutely free or do you mean discounted? And izvinite, ali Vladimir, kako hoćete stipendiji da živim u New York? New York, the most expensive city in the world? Or one, I think Paris is right up there, okay. But probably you could get some discounted programs, and let me get a list of these. Some of these are even affiliated with schools or universities and are very reputable and provide housing and things. Everything we keep in mind, though, that I don't know what the future holds. But let's have a look at this because I used to get this book, but of course now it's online. Okay. No, we don't want this. Ah. Okay, what I'd like to do, because I'm not in my office, is I'd like to pull that old ESL book that has a list of accredited programs that I know are good, and I cannot remember the appropriate website. The ESL directory. Okay. What I want is I want a professional list of those who are qualified to offer these programs, and I don't want to give you an advertising situation. Okay. But I believe this was the ESL directory, and this is what you could look at and you could see what they have. Okay. And you could see what kind of discounts and opportunities that they might have. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, most MBA programs require 2 years of work experience. Okay, what Maxim has asked is about my general opinion on pursuing an MBA. I wouldn't say that this was a tremendously wise turn at this point. One of the first things is they do like to see work experience. Okay. There is a 2+2 program that Harvard offers where you apply early and then you take 2 years off and you're admitted 2 years in advance. But with the current situation, we don't really know what's going to happen. Here's the other thing, and I've gone through this a lot with graduate students, that we sit down and we have that MBA talk. And the first thing that the MBAs always want is they want to be entrepreneurs. You know, they don't want to go work for somebody else. They don't want to go to Wall Street. They want to be entrepreneurs, and they don't care about working in the US. Okay, then when something happens, like the economy can start to get kind of shaky and they don't get a job, they don't want to be entrepreneurs at all. They thought they wanted to be entrepreneurs, but then actually deep down inside, they wanted to get a job at Goldman Sachs and forget about it. Okay, and so you should be prepared to also possibly be working for a international company that would send you overseas. Okay, right now, considering the cost involved, I would be very careful about the path that I took. And what we can do is when this application season is over, I can bring in some of our past MBA students and they can share their different experiences with you and the different ways that they went about thinking about these things. Okay, that some people wanted top schools, others took, I would say, not schools that are not in the top 20, but they ended up not paying anything for it. They were funded. Now, when they graduated and they began to get jobs, they started out making $60,000 or $70,000 a year. Okay, most of them are now making six figures. Okay, but they started out in different companies. They did not start out on Wall Street. Some of them started out with airlines, with credit card companies, with other areas of business. And they got what I would call a solid branded company, but they weren't in financial services. And they began to work their way up that corporate ladder. Okay. I would say that those people have proved to be some of the happiest, and they're on Project Serbia, which is, since I worked from home, does it matter where that home is? That, quite a few people, they get to a point in their career where they can spend a month back here, in addition to their vacation. But they can take a month off work, and then as they move up a little further, they say, how about if I'm over there for 2 months? Maybe you have something in Europe. But a lot of people, they get MBAs and are not in the financial sector where they have to be, are pretty good at working their way back here to be with the rest of us. Okay. So, but I would keep an eye on the current situation, okay? And you really should have 2 years of professional experience. Okay. Okay, now for these US-based companies or institutions, that's when that's the kind of thing that you want to put on your CV. Okay, that you had worked on these projects and things like that. Maybe you will be able to get a letter of recommendation for something like that as well. Okay, so these are good ideas. Let's see. Okay, is there anything else that you all wanted to ask about? Yes, you can definitely do that. In fact, we have someone doing that right now. Oh, sorry. Okay, Maxim is asking about the possibility of choosing one degree as an undergrad and then changing to another field. Okay, and that's another way. Last night we talked a little bit about interdisciplinary studies. Well, that's another way that your studies become interdisciplinary, is when you have an undergraduate degree in one thing and a graduate degree in something else. Of course, they need to be related. I always say the Bachelor of Physics is probably not going for a PhD at the Yale School of Music unless there's something we don't know about that person. I mean, it has to be logical, but that's very trendy now to change to other fields. No, okay, starting a tourist visa will not make a mess for you. I mean, starting a student visa will not mess up your tourist visa. Okay. Okay, let's see. Well, Sonia, the question about doing a PhD in the humanities and that job prospects are not that good. Well, I think those of us who are in humanities or social sciences, um, okay, but we're not quite artists, okay, are aware that our job prospects are not the same as, say, someone in IT. Okay, that you have fields that are just hot. Okay, and programming and those things are still hot, but things are in flux. Also, working in academia can be a challenge, but PhDs are hired for other things. If you want to kind of get an idea of what your job will be like, I will show you another rather interesting site. Well, of course it can't be found because it's an ancient page. Okay, so this is the up-to-date. The first thing they have is they always have a featured occupation. Okay, but you can look at different occupations to see what's fastest growing, what's highest paying. Okay, so if you want to see what's fastest growing, okay, I know somebody's interested in this. Okay, and then they tell you the median pay. But these are the fastest growing. Not everything is going to have that kind of growth rate. And especially, honestly, it is so difficult now to predict what is going to happen. But let's see if we look up here and let's say we look at a doctoral program. And you can look and see what it is that what areas you're interested in. I always look at this and I'm always amazed at the political science teachers, the PhDs are doing so well. And I'm like, we made such big messes that we're going to be needing a lot of political scientists to come in and tell us. But see, you can look at, okay, for example, sociology teachers, the people that I know who have gotten PhDs in sociology have done very well, but they've gone to pretty intense schools for those programs. But a lot of it is going to be what you make of things. And I wish that I could say, yes, everything's going to be all right, but That's not really who I am. Okay, this is a good question about, okay, how to make sure not to end up sounding like we don't know what we're doing when we're applying for a PhD that's not in the exact same field as our undergraduate. Okay, you research, you go look at the department, you read the courses, you see what's happening that in that area that is going to be helpful to you to show that you have some knowledge. Okay, you will also, okay, for example, most people who know that they want to go in another area, it's because they've learned about that area and they see opportunities in that area. You know, but you cannot make an illogical life change. Okay, here are some things that, okay, for example, we have programs where you get an undergraduate degree, and then to be what you really want to be, like a doctor or a lawyer, you have to go to graduate school. Okay. People who want to go to law school have to take, okay, in most cases, they will have to take what's known as a law school admissions test. And when you look at the data and you see who scores highest on those, it will be philosophers, historians, the humanities and social sciences people will tend to score better because these tests are very verbal and they're based in logic and puzzle solving. Okay. And so whereas a lot of people that have business degrees in the US for years wanted to go to law school, okay, because they heard that's, you know, where the money would be. And it was surprising for them to learn that the law school admissions test, that the philosophers tended to score higher because of puzzling it out. Okay, and so you should know something about that area. People in the US who go to medical school usually have a bachelor's degree in life sciences because they take a medical school admissions exam that asks some scientific questions and about chemistry and things that you should have some kind of background in science. But most people, and as we get more into Slack, that will give us a chance to talk more about the change that you want to make and why you want to make it. And that's why they call it a personal statement. Well, one of the things that you want to do, okay, one of the most practical things, okay, about getting research experience is when I have high school students who are published in academic journals. Okay, so you have to do everything that you can to hustle and to volunteer and to be part of projects. Okay, that this is one of the things that you also want to get. If research does not seem to be an option, if you run straight into a wall of vezes and you're not in it, or you don't have the connections, or you're too young, or the teaching assistants are doing all of that, or you just can't find your way to do those type of things, you know, that if you can't get that door open, then you have to find other things you can do. I have students who take online classes at Coursera, or they do a lot of reading and research, or they find other ways to get involved in their field. Okay? And so what you need to do is you need to find people who are doing that and talk to them and see how you can get involved. Start looking at the academic journals as well. Okay? And just if you can't engage with research, there are other things that you can do. And also, do not forget that you will, even as a bachelor's, for your bachelor's diploma, you will also have a thesis and you will need to defend it. Okay, and so that's also something else that can count towards that. Okay, and often when you talk about what you want to do, that we try to find ways to help you do that. Okay, we do what we can to help. Okay, but there are a lot of different ways. Go to, if it's science, go to someone's lab and volunteer. See what you can do with water samples. You just really have to use your creativity and your resourcefulness. Okay, but we do have students in other areas who don't have. Yes, join your student associations. Okay, it's not the same as published research, but if you present it at a seminar, that should definitely be on your CV. Okay, and yes, find the professional associations and join them. Usually, with being a student, you can get in for cheap. Okay, and often that opens up other areas. As far as backup programs, typically okay, this is something that you have to decide. I think that 2 to 3, what we call reaches, 2 to 3 safeties, and then some that are good matches for you in between. Okay, you will also get a better feel when you begin to contact the departments and also to go to information sessions. The schools now have information sessions online, and that can be another way that you can more or less start to get a feeling of where you are on this spectrum of where you fit. Okay, thank you, Giovanna. Sometimes I feel like my explaining is just like too much for everyone. Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you all would like to talk about? Okay, I'm very much enjoying reading these forms that you all have been filling out and getting acquainted with everybody. Doing internships is always valid. Okay, Alexa, let me go back up and see which one it is. It must have rolled past you. Let me make the window bigger. Okay, Alexa. Okay, the master's programs in those areas, some of them like international relations, that one can be tough to fund because you have a lot of diplomats and other mid-career people from all over the world who are going into international relations, but it's not impossible. Okay, for that area of IR and diplomacy. Okay, political science, it does seem to be somewhat easier, but you just really and truly, you have to look and see who's going to offer you that. Typically, the master's programs are what people go to and commit to get a financial bump is often the way that these things are looked at, is that you do that to earn more money. And because of that, it's not as easy to get the funding as the kind of commitment of long-term teaching, research assistantships, and these things that that come with a PhD. But I'm also telling you that right now we're just watching the situation, and probably some more information that I'm going to start collecting from you all that I saw was not collected on the first form or on the second, is I also need to know where you all are in the year of your education. So do not be surprised to get something out that asks when you plan to start your education in the US or when you would like to do so. Because that also makes a difference as to how long or how much time you have to look for this kind of funding. Probably you can get a stipend. You can probably get some kind of merit scholarship at most schools, but it will be hard to get the whole thing funded. And the other thing that is difficult to get funded is going to be your living expenses. Okay, but that is not impossible. There are fellowships and other possibilities. Okay, like I know that American University can be generous. I know that Notre Dame has the Kroc school that a lot of Serbian students have gone to there, and it's kind of a combination of a little bit of diplomacy, a little bit of security, a little bit of conflict resolution, but there is funding for it, and it's very prestigious. Okay, getting in, it's I always assume that all of you are top-notch, excellent students who bring a lot to the table and are able to present yourself. So I don't worry too much about people getting in unless they just have really crazy ideas, okay? Unless they're being unrealistic. Okay, IT areas, those are pretty easy to find. Okay, Dorothea, HR activities should give you an honorary degree in psychology. Okay. Okay, but this is how I would very seriously present my experience of dealing with people, of working with people. I remember when I started doing this, and I was much younger then, and I knew people as friends, that were also, professional. And I can remember a friend of mine, she's a retired diplomat now, but at the time that she said something about the people, and that it's just that the people can be the hardest part of the job. And I was actually thinking of students and people like you all, because I still didn't understand that I was going to be a boss. But anyway, I remember I said, oh, I like to think the people are the best part of the job. And that has come through, you know, I've thought about that so much, but HR and psychology, you know, medical psychology, clinical psychology, this kind of thing is that, you know, I can see where that statement of purpose and that reasoning would write itself. Okay, because you see, when you start sorting things out, especially between other people and you're in HR, you know, you start to see what silly lives, silly messes we make of our lives and so on. And then you start to kind of see yourself, and you could make a very good case for doing that. Okay. Okay, computer science and IT, you know, they're loaded over there. Okay, yes, where you can obtain skills that are much like skills obtained through participating in research, doing data collection, data interpretation. Listen, sometimes people do not seem to understand that a job that allows you to do these kind of activities is relevant, even if it's not some kind of glamorous job. Okay, it's the fact that you did this, that you learned about doing this, okay, and that these things are important. That's part of what you have to do. That's part of what you'll do as a graduate student. It's part of what you'll do as an assistant. I don't know if we've got any physicists in the house tonight or anyone close to that area, but I can remember in my history of science class, I can't remember the details, but a graduate student whose job was just firing these things and breaking up photons or something like that. And it was like the most boring thing to sit in the dark room and do that all day. But guess what? They did something very unusual. And whatever it is they did, I think it's named after him or something. But that just goes to show you that there are a lot of times like that. And the fact that you've actually done that, that you've engaged with a team, that, you know, if the PhD, it's a commitment. Okay, and if you've shown that you can commit to the kind of activities that you can do the heavy lifting, that's quite important. Okay, anything else before we close? Okay, I think I got all the questions. Sorry, Alexa, that one rolled past me. Okay, well, I will see you all tomorrow evening. We'll talk a little bit about going to the U.S. in the pre-departure, but we'll also leave it open for questions and things like this, and I'll kind of give you a tour of what our room looks like in Slack, and we'll start getting people in there, okay? You guys have a nice evening. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.